Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Metanauts. I'm Lee Mason, also known as Metageist, and in this show we're going to be interviewing the artists, builders, architects, makers, collectors, and portal hoppers of the early Metaverse. In this show we're going to be talking to Coldie 3D. Coldie's a prolific and successful crypto artist who also fought hard for the 10% royalties in the early days and had huge influence on making this a place that works for everybody. We're going to talk about how he got here, what he's working on now, and then at the end we're going to go for a little Metaverse romp, so look out for that bit. And without further ado, let's dive right in. And here we are. Hi Coldie, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you, Lee?
Awesome. Yeah, really good. Thank you very much. Cheers for joining us for our very first Metanauts show. Really appreciate it. You were definitely one of the artists on the top of my list, and you were very enthusiastic to help us, so I really appreciate that. And then we're just going to sort of hang out, chat here on the video, and then we're going to jump into the Metaverse at some point as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So you're well known in the NFT space as a crypto artist, as an OG specifically, been here longer than most. You were one of the first names that I heard when I first discovered the NFT scene through Matt and Rizzle's podcast. I remember scrolling down names of artists, and it was Xcopy, Coldie, Josie, and then like diving in and doing research, trying to figure out who you guys were. Not fully realizing that 3 or 4 weeks later, you were going to be one of the first people to support me as an NFT artist and buy my super rare Genesis piece, which was absolutely amazing and validating, and probably why I'm still here.
Before we move on, I want to talk about how much I love that piece. You know, that thing really blew me away because it was early in this whole VR thing. Like nobody was really, maybe a couple people, but you came on there, and I have a shaman. I collect shaman NFTs. Like it's a weird little niche I love to get. And man, it's called Astro Shaman, right? Or what's
That's
it called?
right, yeah. Astro Shaman, yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, I can inscribe something on the Astro Shaman piece. I was like, oh my God, I am so sold on this guy. Like, so, you know, right out of the gates, you were just killing it. So, and now we're buddies, which is awesome, right? So that's what I love about this space is like, you can get hooked on a piece of art or something, and then you get into the rabbit hole and you're like, huh, this guy's pretty cool. And now we're hanging out. So cheers to you. That was a beautiful piece.
Awesome. So your stereoscopic art has been your passion for a long time, as far as I can tell. And that really sets your art apart from everyone else's. That was really what was amazing, actually, going back to sort of really first starting to dive into the NFT art scene, was like how crazy different everybody's art was, right? It wasn't like, because there was no scene. And when you haven't got a scene yet, when it hasn't really started, you haven't got genres, you haven't got people like being to influence each other or ripping each other off or copying each other or whatever. So there's like you, Hakato, Xcopy, Josie, all of these artists, Matt Kane, do all these completely different things. And I would say that the stereoscopic 3D stuff it's sort of like the medium that sets you apart. And I've been watching you experiment and explore that and push that really up until like the last piece that I saw was the 3D piece that you put in a gallery with the mix of the different decentralized faces. So you see now it's becoming a 3D thing as well that you can look at in a 3D space, which we'll check out at some point soon and look at that more closely. But where did that sort of passion for the stereoscopic stuff start? Because I'm guessing that we've had a conversation at some point in the past about like toys in the 80s and things like that, and I just want to hear a little bit about that background.
Yeah, it is definitely rooted in my childhood. Growing up as a kid, I had the Viewmaster card, the reels that you would, there's like 7 pictures on a circle, and I lived in a small little bubble. I didn't have a lot of culture growing up. And so what I would do, I'd put those slides in there and I would be transported to like a marketplace in Thailand or somewhere that was just way different than Southern California, right? And it would be in 3D, and I was just able to like, it's weird. I think that was actually one of the first times I was able to get into like a flow state with a visual, with art, where I'd put the Viewmaster on and I would be transported in my mind, right? And I was able to feel the power that art or photography was giving me and able to like make this connection, right? So, and I just love those things. My parents also had these Viewmaster cards, so I have, hundreds Yeah, these old Victorian.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen those in antique shops. Yeah.
my parents have had those. Don't know why, but bless them. And I would look at that stuff. So, and that was before I ever considered even being interested in art. So fast forward a solid, we'll call it 20 years. I went through art school, and it was in 2000 and let's call it 7. I randomly joined this 3D photography club of Southern California, right? It was something to do on a Wednesday night
There
in
can't
LA.
have been many of those around.
Oh God, no. The average age is like 60 years old. It's an older person's passion, right? So I would go to these meetings, and I was like 22 at the time or something. And they were like, wow, like, we can't believe that you're actually here at this meeting. That's awesome. And then they actually just, they embraced me and brought me in, and they taught me the best of the best ways to do it all, right? Because they wanted to pass this on to the next generation. And me being young and vibrant and excited, they're like, dude, let's help this guy. So I learned from literally the best. Like, one of them, his name was Ray Zone. He passed away. Let me give Ray a little shout. So this shows my 3D nerdness.
Stereo world. Wow, this is all completely new. I've never seen anything like this before.
This is Ray Zone.
Is he like the godfather of stereoscopy?
Yeah, he made about 100 or more 3D comic books. That was his niche. And he's a legend. He passed away kind of unexpectedly, so it was like a super loss. But he was a mentor, and he was one of those early people who really believed in me in stereoscopy. So, all these people build me up, and Ray actually did a show in Burbank, which is just outside of Los Angeles, and it was a stereoscopic gallery show. And man, that was a turning point in my entire existence, because I walked into a fine art gallery, and there was all different kinds. There was lenticulars.
Oh, I've always wanted to make lenticular art. Never done it. Oh yeah, so cool.
So, and it all pops off, right? So there's 3D glasses versions. There was lenticulars. And the one thing that really, really, really rocked my mind was you can project up on a big screen with the 3D glasses on. And he did these, they're basically like line illustrations of like kind of comic book people, but he put them in depth in 3D. And when I saw those on the screen, I exactly knew what I wanted to learn and master. And that is what has gotten me to where I'm at now. And by no means have I mastered it, but I'm on the path of learning and diving and getting better for just stereoscopy's sake. Right. So, and since then Ray actually taught me how to do some 3D conversion things that are kind of laborious and difficult to do. And so, all that stuff kept building and building and building. And then as I found NFTs, like you said, I had a differentiator that I was able to hop in and say, hey, I'm doing this stuff that's way different than, Josie, Hackatal, Xcopy, everybody who was in the scene. And it was easy because there's no competition, right? Art, I don't think art is a competition, but if you were to ever label, like you were saying, oh, they both do that same thing, there was no crossover really.
So okay, so we fast forward, I don't know, 2 decades, 15 years, something like that. Maybe you, can you cast your mind back to a time just before NFTs and crypto art were on your radar? What were you doing around that time? And then was there a first sort of, what was it that was the first thing that you noticed? Were you already interested in Ethereum and things like that at that point, and then you saw art, or did you come in like art first as I did?
I mean, before crypto art, in terms of like the art I was making, I was doing stereoscopics. So I do like gallery pieces, like on canvas. These are like an anaglyph, and it's got gold leafing on it. So I was doing this type of stuff, and I was getting into some like national juried shows, which is like super awesome because anaglyph stuff doesn't get into shows. So all these 3D nerds were like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you got into a show. Like, they're like, how did you do it? Like, So like that was pretty cool, just from stereoscopy's sake. It was like, cool, like I'm doing something that is visually engaging. You don't need the glasses for them. But when you do, it's way better, right? It still holds its own. So I was doing that, and it was awesome. But again, with any gallery show, you have to, if you're looking to sell, you have to hope that that right buyer is in the town at the night of the opening. There's all these logistical like synchronicities that have to happen. So when I found out about blockchain, that was slightly before NFTs, but what I figured out was I went on Google and I typed in, blockchain and art, because that's the only thing I could add to the ecosystem. Like, I'm not a coder, my skill base is in art. So I was like, well, what are artists doing in blockchain, right? And at that point, it was slim to none. It was, CryptoPunks, Dada NYC, and I think CryptoKitties had just come out. And I found a place at Rare Art Labs, which I think was the first Ethereum marketplace for artwork. So I started on there. And that was at the same time, I came in and there are these random people that we now know. It was, there's a list. So it was Xcopy, Hackatow, Osinachi, Brad D'Amico, Max Osiris, Miss L. Simpson. Oh God, I'm probably leaving some people out. It was vibrant, but none of us knew each other. None of us ever like contacted each other because we were just so new, and we were like, I don't know, I'm just gonna like tokenize a thing, and no one was buying anything, So we were just happy to have a new place to share art. Really, it wasn't even, I hope this sells out. It was more like a marketing tool where it's like, well, I like to share my art. So if, somebody clicks on the site, they'll get to see my stuff. That was like really the what we were getting out of it at that point.
Those are all names that are still in the scene, right? Like, there haven't been many examples of anyone dropping out of this once they've taken a red pill.
And most of those people, well, not most, but a fair amount have now been at major auction houses.
Yeah.
So it's crazy in 3 years how that the uptick in the cycles have happened, right? I don't think we've obviously haven't hit mass adoption, but on these cycles, now we've gotten a cycle where the auction houses are interested, right? And so as the ebb and flow happens, we need those peaks because, the way the charts work, the next peak will be higher. So we need these things to get to mass adoption, right? So I think it's just a testament to time, to all these people who, stuck with it for 3 years, Yeah. But what I think the cool thing is that, on we're all on the same path, right? I have a lot of art pieces that have like pathways in them, and we're all on that exact same path. Some people just started before, right? So it's all the same trajectory, which I think is beautiful.
So yeah, I've always wondered actually what you think about where we are and what's happened. So of course, like, people think because Twitter have now made some NFTs, it's mainstream. It's like, well, I would argue that, it's not mainstream adoption, but it's in the vernacular, right? And NFT is something that people are starting to understand. And we've had this massive, like parabolic hype phase with Nifty and Beeple and all that sort of stuff. Was that, I guess that must have been a surprise to you. You must have thought at some point, we're really early. This is inevitable. At some point, it's going to be huge. But no way would have thought it would have happened as soon as that, right?
Yeah. No, and it's funny, when I came into the space, I was pragmatically thinking as well, and kind of like, well, because there's artists that I love, and half of me was like, well, this is a playground where there's no rules, nothing matters, I guess, but it does, it's on the blockchain. But in a sense, I knew that there was going to be a time when the Banksies or the Beeples or the Shepherd Fairies, these different major artists were going to come in. And I thought it was important to like be a guinea pig, right? And hop in here and like do the test cases, because a lot of people that are established on their levels need to be sure about something before they come in, right? So it takes a group that can be like the guinea pigs, or the trial. and I wore that badge with honor, right? Some of the things I did were successful and some were absolutely not, right? But in the course of it all, you start to lay out possibilities, and you're able to at least lay some groundwork so that when someone like Shepard Fairey did this, like, he was watching this for years. This wasn't like something that just came up. These people, and I know this for a fact, they have been talked to for, at least 3 years, right? And they're just like, yeah, when the time is right, they had to know for themselves. So I think all of us who are testing and innovating right now and in the past, it matters because these other people who are coming in are watching and learning. And when it goes well for us, they have a lot more confidence and they know what they can do as well.
Well, you say you made mistakes, so but you seem to have been very consistent in that you've been about scarcity. It's only very recently that you did anything that wasn't one of one. But was there can you think of a sale or anything that happened that was like, that was a moment where you leveled up? Is there anything that sort of stands out, any sort of sale or show or whatever?
One of the most important pieces that I've made to date is my async piece, which is called Choose Your Own Adventure. And it's based on the teenager adolescent book, where you can literally read 10 pages and you're given a choice, and the whole path of the book changes. And that was another early childhood thing that had a huge impact on me. So, when I came to async, that's what I envisioned, right? Like nonlinear storytelling, like, holy shit, like I can do that now. So I created this landscape again with the pathway. There's a theme. I have different themes that are in different series. So I took that one and, I created this, God, there is at least, 40 or 50 different layers on that thing. Yeah, no, it was, it was definitely a very hard thing. It probably took me a total of like off and on for like 6 months to like really wrap my head around it and make sure when people, when you own it, that when you change your layer, it's not going to mess the whole thing up, right? So there's a lot of layering issues and things that I had to kind of think about ahead of time. I want it to be a group thought art piece. So it's kind of the collective consciousness of all the layer owners at one time should be able to kind of give a feeling, so when Ethereum is at $4,000 and everyone's losing their mind, the sky says euphoric, and it's the beautiful thing, right? And maybe more people are lighter than darker, or whatever that means. And I check back, every month or so and just see like what's the group feeling right now, So to me, that was a super important piece. And I remember when I sold it, I did a live stream because I was just talking about it, having fun, and when the bids came in, that was awesome. I was like totally humbled. I was like, holy crap, like amazing that someone even wants to like own the art. That's rad. But what really got me was when the layers sold and then the new owners right then started changing them. I literally broke down. Like it's bigger than any of, I'll make art because I have to, right? That's just what I have to do. So when somebody takes that art, it's like when you have a baby and then it was born and I saw it moving on its own, like that was some heavy, heavy stuff there. So,
and it will outlast you, right? It's going to exist into the future. That's the idea. Like long after we're gone, that'll still be doing its thing, ticking over, changing.
Yeah, it's nuts. And also to that being said, part of us being the guinea pigs and important things was standing up. There was a group of about 15 artists that basically created a manifesto for secondary rights for 10%. And that was super, super important. And I think that laid the groundwork again for everybody else who came after to, because we knew it was never going to get better. You never get more percentages, you only get less. So we had to put our foot down and say, hey, this is it. It's 10% or shut up. Right. And that potentially could have hurt our quote unquote NFT careers, but it was met with honor and reciprocal energy. The platforms, the collectors and the artists had to come to an agreement. Right. And it worked.
a very small window of opportunity there, wasn't there, where you could do that before more larger platforms jumped in, and we can already see pushback on that as well. Binance have released a platform and they're saying 1%, and people are like, nope, that's not going to work for us, and that needs to continue. And that story that you've just said, that needs to be repeated over and over again. So this is something that you guys fought for, because I've just taken it for granted from day one. It's just and it is one of the major selling points. It's one of the best things about it. It's incredible.
100%. It's crazy.
So you're obviously still prolific. You've still been working on stuff recently, and you just did the Bonhams sale. I traveled up to London to go and check it out. The Super Rare Bonhams Crypto G's show looked like it was a great success. It went really well for you. How was that whole process for you, and were you happy with it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, in terms of like the possible scenarios to do that type of auction house with, having it be directly with Super Rare on their contracts, minted on my account, it was well set up. There wasn't any like deal breakers. I thought it was super fair. And at the same time, it was curated with other people from Super Rare. So it was all people who I was friends with. Again, a lot of these people were on Rare Art Labs back in the day. So it was an awesome celebration. And, the consensus was, obviously it's a big show, but it was all of us just kind of high-fiving and saying like, congratulations. It wasn't, I need to get this much money or I'm not, it didn't really matter, and I think that, Bonhams did a really great job of, doing some education beforehand, where they had some like kind of AMAs where I think it was me and Matt Kane were on one, where it was just people who were new to NFTs and were just asking, honest, maybe slightly brutal questions, just wanting to figure out the tech. It was awesome. I think that is part of what we're all doing, right? Is educating just as much as, being artists. We're still the shepherds for the flock, so I thought, they did a really great job. It was interesting, just that when it really came down to it, the serious collectors are still crypto people. So I think that, again, we're still really, really early, which is good to hear. I mean, I'm still stoked about that. I think I still need as much time as I can, because, it's just fun to be underground, and I think that, it's, even though we've exploded in terms of where we were like a year ago, the traditional world is not ready. I don't think that they are, and I think a lot of them have heard about it, and it's going to take years because that's how slow the art world works. But I think that it was a Richter scale move. Like, so please tell me about, how was it to go to an auction house and see crypto art? What was that like?
Yeah, so it was really cool for me to finally have an opportunity to go and see that artwork in the real world. It seemed like I've waited forever for that. I hadn't done it. Obviously, I've got my own computers and screens and stuff, so I've seen it here. So it was cool to go there. For me, though, unfortunately, the layout of the room, and that was a little bit disappointing. And I think that it would have been nicer if they'd have understood that if you're going to put it into a room, put it on as a physical show, then maybe everyone should have their own screen and be a bit more information. So, but it's really early days, and fair play for dipping their toe in the water, taking a chance on it. It was obviously a success, and that's the very first thing I've seen in the real world. So in the UK, as far as I'm aware, no one else has done it. I've been talking to people about doing a show. Known Origin are talking about doing a show, but because the COVID is up and down and who knows where we're going to be in 2 months, no one's really taken a risk on it. So yeah, there was a couple of TVs in the room, and it was off down a corridor, and it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. But at the same time, like, it looks like that really didn't matter. And they'd say they're really excited about doing really going full bore with physicals and projections and AR and all sorts of stuff in the future. So for a first go, fair play. It's the first opportunity I've had, so I really appreciated it.
I would have loved to come over to see that, just for a time and a space. That's a big moment for me. So, watching it from the computer screen was what I'm used to with NFTs, but it's like you said, it's being in the room with the art, which is, how I identify with art a lot more than on a screen. So I think it's cool. And also I think that all the auction houses are having a chance to re-level up, or like put their foot in the, put their feet in the sand in different ways and figure out how they want to reinvent themselves, and, Bonhams, they're ready to go. Nima, who put the show on, he gets it. He's into crypto art. He doesn't want to stop doing this. And you see the same with Christie's and Sotheby's. It's gonna keep growing. And I'm honestly honored to be one of the guinea pigs. Again, like, we are still guinea pigs, right? We just leveled up guinea pigs, right? Did it go perfectly? Absolutely not, right? And that doesn't matter, but nothing's perfect the first time, So I think it's important to hold that and say, okay, this was awesome. It was a time and a place. We were down the corridor sharing screens on LCD screens, like, it was kind of like the minor leagues of the major leagues, but it happened. And the next time they're going to do better for whoever they show, like, they're going to learn from what they did with us. And then they're going to say, okay, now we know to give them their own screens, and I'm honored that I was the one that was sharing a screen, because now they know,
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about, like, I've seen some people lamenting the death of crypto art, saying NFTs aren't dead, but crypto art is dead. How do you feel about that? Because people differentiate those terms differently, right? So it's, words fail us, and it doesn't really capture, the zeitgeist so well.
Yeah. I totally think that there, like you said, it's the words kind of matter a little bit, right? So crypto art to me is art that is about crypto,
Right.
and theme, visuals, or it could be using crypto, like blockchain, in it, right? And I think that those can even be dissected apart into subgenres. But I think that the crypto and the art, they both need to be existing together for it to truly be called crypto art. I think that there's a lot of non-fungible tokens, right, that are technically like in crypto art, but they're not. It's not about the movement. It's not using the technology. And I think that we're going to start seeing collectors gravitate to different styles, right? So maybe you like NBA Top Shot basketball cards. Those are NFTs, right? Those have value, but those are absolutely have nothing to do with crypto art, right? They're using the blockchain. That's it, right? So when I started making art, I'm a very much of a storytelling artist. Everything has a meaning or a theme behind it. So I'm not very good at making 3D bouncing balls in Maya or whatever. I can't do that. I chose not to learn how to do that, right? So but my things have story, right? So the storytelling of crypto art, with my portrait series, I was able to put faces into art of people who were making ripples in the space, right? And to me, that was an important thing that I wanted to do, not only as a experiment. Dude, I never did one portrait before I did that decentralized series. It wasn't something that was like a thing, but the ultimate challenge to me was to not only make one, but to make a series, right? So I put myself on the hook. I was like, you're not just going to make Vitalik. Like, you're going to have to do at least a dozen of these. And of course, right now you have no idea how you're going to do that, but make one. And then it starts to, dovetail the history in real time, so Vitalik 2018, totally. He was the guy, right? And then as you start going on, I did, Winklevoss brothers. I did Snowden. I did Warren Buffett when he came up. So it's kind of a historical chronology with crypto art, so I think that's where the collectors are going to start saying, well, there's people who collect 1920s war era, blah, 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 right? They have their specialties. This will be a specialty niche, right? Just as much as NBA Top Shot or Crypto Punks or, the game, or VR, so like the VR art is exactly that same thing, where people are finding their specialized niches, and the subgenres are going to start really taking hold. And I think that's where, people staying in their like happy land, you know, like you're VR, right? You want to do VR. That's your jam and you're really good at it. So you're one of the leaders in VR, right? And I'll tell you that, even if you won't say that. So there's different people who are in those spaces, but then the fun part about technology is you can start like going into different lands, you know, like I didn't grow up doing VR, right? But I love stereoscopy. So like you were saying, with my portraits, I'm making them now in 3D VR layers. And to me, that is a game changer for my own progression. You know, like I would have never thought that was a possibility 3 years ago when I did the first metallic. I thought it was 3D glasses and that was going to be it, right? So there's so much opportunity to grow and learn. And in crypto art, it's a hyperspeed. It's literally innovation is at a fast vortex, and you can pivot if you choose to. You really can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's one of the things that can be seen as a bit of a detrimental side to it, is that there's so much interesting innovation going on that you feel this FOMO and you feel sort of tapped into it at all times, and it's always something. And it's not because, you know, it's not like you're addicted to a soap opera or watching the news. This is like cutting edge, interesting personalities breaking and bending the rules. And I've taken you along for the ride, and every day there's something else. Yeah, do you miss it being a bit quieter? Is it a bit, does it get on top of you like it does me sometimes? Or
yeah, definitely. I had to stop watching so much. I used to really binge and watch like YouTube crypto things all the time, you know, because I'm just interested in projects and, you know, whatever, market sentiment and, you know, the prices, all that stuff. And like it was good to learn a lot because I ingest a lot of information, but then it just becomes like, oh my God, what's on crypto YouTube today? Like, so I've had to make conscious decisions to like not engage as much maybe, or just find the one video that helps me and not watch 20. I mean, crypto art scene it's chaos, you know, literally every day there's a huge like art blocks drop, or there is stuff going on everywhere all the time. And the FOMO, like you said, is huge because, you know, basically some of these projects you're just buying lottery tickets, you know, like for like some of the generative ones, you give zero point 0.1 ether and you see what you get.
yeah,
But it's art, right? So you could get a nice thing that you get to hold, but you get a different nice thing, but that one happens to be worth, you know, 1,000 times more. So I think
the crypto historians are going to have a field day trying to
oh yeah,
figure out this stuff.
And the cool thing about it, like as a creator, is, you know, so I like the Art Blocks project. It's on chain.
That's crypto art, isn't it, in its essence? Because you're writing it based on your transaction. That's dictating the piece that you get, and it's a one of one.
Yep. And it's generative, you know, there's all these great things about it. And as an artist, I've been collecting these things, just not all the time, but when something hits me, I'll, you know, buy a lottery ticket basically and see, hey, what did I get this time? You know, I'll like it no matter what. I just collect. But as I did that long enough, now I want to play, you know, and I, not for any monetary reasons, but I want to, like, what's this thing all about? How can I do it in my way that is just has nothing to do with any of you people? I don't, you know, to each their own. And a piece I made like 8 years ago had nothing to do with anything crypto. It was the most weird thing I'd ever decided to do as a piece of art. It was using old vinyl records, and I made it, and it looks beautiful. I made one of them. I made another one for a Christmas present, but so I had this one and it hung in my house. I just fucking love this thing. And I figured it out. Right. And a little teaser, I guess, but like that will be the emphasis for one of these projects.
Cool. I was going to ask you what you're working on now. It sounds like that's one of the things. And the other thing is these split t-shirts that I've been looking forward to seeing. I think they're sold out, right? I'm not going to be able to get one. Is that right?
Well, actually, it's funny you asked that. So I started the project 2 years ago, and I was trying to bootstrap it myself. You know, printing, the cutting, the sewing, tags on the shirts. It was a lot. And the technology was not there, straight up. I was going to have to release it not being right. COVID happened, everything shut down. That was the best thing to happen to this project. And I'm hooked up with Meta Factory, who this is their jam, right? This is what they do, is apparel on the blockchain. So I took the same screens, like the same images, and we got different shirt colors, which I think are way cooler, So we do have that one's getting close too. So those are gonna be for sale. This run is gonna be limited because I already sold like a dozen of them over the 2 years ago, and they never got their shirts. But they're going to get way better shirts. They're like, their ROI is awesome. Like in terms of collectability, they did great. So basically those are going to go out to the people who bought them. And then there's 10 of each shirt. Basically 3 of the 4 haven't been sold yet. So there's going to be probably like 25 shirts that'll be up for grabs. But again, they're in different sizes because they're pre-made, so that's where the size FOMO, right? It's like limited edition. Like I have 25, but I got 4 XLs, like how many XL dudes are there? You don't know, so that's the crazy thing I think is going to be interesting is like, yep, I got 1 XL left, like what's going to happen to that? There might be like, I have like some of my Genesis shirts that were like the first version ones that I didn't sell. I might auction one of those just because it's, the super OG. And actually the only other person who has one of those is Joe Lubin, the co-founder of Ethereum. I gave one to him at Ethereal Summit 2 years ago.
Did I have an NFT attached to it? Was it just a T?
At that point it was just the shirt. So I'm going to follow up and do some type of token provenance for that. But dude, that shirt was honestly at least 15 years in my head of a project I wanted to do. I never had a reason to do a t-shirt, right? So it just sat there. And then when crypto came up, I was like, holy crap, I can actually do my t-shirt project now. So it's all those things that take up this like mental RAM that you could just do it, like kind of like purging the cache, where you could just like get it out of your brain.
You probably got a load of others, right? Like mine was the Cyclops. That's like the 3D printed thing with a marker. Wanted to do that for so long, but like, how was I going to sell them, right? I'll put them on Etsy. Are people going to get it? As like what I deliver it wasn't going to be something that could be kept and, traded or held or whatever. And then all of a sudden it was just like, so as soon as I got into super rare, I was like, right, I'm going to try and make this thing happen.
And I think it's badass because I have one on my shelf at my house, and those Cyclopses are, man, as sculptural pieces of art, you did an awesome job. Like that's no hot air. Like when I got that thing in the mail, it was just like, ooh, yes, like you really nailed it. The patina, like the kind
that means so much, man. That means so much. That's so cool,
dude. It blows me away. And then the fact that it's functionally like AR, like holy shit, right? So, and I'm so happy that you were telling me about that, because you were just offhandedly saying, yeah, I'm gonna ship them soon, and there's one on Nifty, and it's
one left or something. Yeah.
I literally, as you told me that, I went there and I bought one. I didn't even like do a post-it note for later. I was like, I got to get this done now, and I'm honored.
That's the thing, though. You can miss so much, right? You can just miss stuff now because there's just so much noise. It's so easy to miss stuff and you see like a day or a week later, it's like, damn, that's amazing. I would have snapped that up, and it's long gone because you just don't see it.
And that's the problem is I love collecting. I collected baseball cards growing up. I love collecting things, and with NFTs, it's good, but in a kind of a hard way, because I invest some of my earnings of art back into it, other people's art. So I don't even think that hard, because it's almost like brain money, where it's like I created this money out of my brain and now I can spend it on my buddy's stuff. And I don't even think sometimes. I'm like, I need Metageist's thing right now. And like, I don't care, I can pay my bills, but it's just like, nope, I don't care. Done.
Yep.
And honestly, it's that nudge from a friend that matters, right? So while you're getting Genesis pieces, we were all there at one point. Like, I got your Genesis piece, right? So like, what a cycle that is, right? Where a friend supports a friend, and that means so much more than what the quote unquote like top dollar value should be. It doesn't matter.
It
Like,
really doesn't.
You just got to make art. Like, I've made like probably 130 things, which is crazy to even think about that in that amount of time. But I still am learning. I don't know, and I think that's what, especially when people are starting out, they just need a nudge and a validation of just like, dude, you are worth it, right? And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, when you say like it feels better buying a piece off an artist you love than selling a piece, and people were like, a cynic will say, yeah, whatever, I don't believe that for a second, but it really does. It really does. Especially when you know the person and you're part of that process, and you really get that that gratitude, that thanks, and sell that, and instantly they're motivated to like step it up, do another piece, and
Sure.
and do another piece.
Yes.
And what
Yes.
you're doing is you sort of like, push them down the rabbit hole, and that's it. And you just watch that journey.
You know what? That exact thing happened also with selling. So it's hard for me to sell anything, right? I very much don't want to sell. But someone came to me and they really wanted this Max Osiris piece. And man, I think Max, we're talking about subgenres, he will be at the top of the trash art movement. I mean, that's an obvious statement. That's no, newsworthy thing, but he is that one of those guys, right? So this guy wanted a Max piece, and it was a great piece. And I was like, ooh, man, you're hurting me on this one. Like, this is a really, really good one. But at the same time, I knew that it's important to resell art, because then that artist is able to see like a market appreciation, and for collectors to see like, oh, this Max Osiris piece is worth this much money now, because that matters to collectors, right? And collectability. So I was basically, as much as it was great for me to sell a piece of art, it was even greater for me to help Max. First of all, he gets secondary commissions on that. So he gets some mailbox money, and the demand, it was crazy. He said his stuff sold out that day, like everything that was available. So it's all of us along the way helping each other. We just give these little pushes. We're like, no, you're good, and I love you, and I'm going to give you a nice little shove up the hill, right? And we're all doing that over and over and over again. So, and I've talked to other people like Jason Bailey and these other collectors, where, I mean, I had a lot of sadness after I sold a couple different pieces. I sold a Hackatow piece to Yaya, who's an awesome collector, and I was sad.
Yeah.
And it was this Hackatow where only one owns it, to Pac-Man. Real solid piece. And Jason was great about it. He's like, dude, I get it, but this is what we're doing. Like, we have to sell to move it all. Like, we could hold on to these things and pass it on to our grandkids and, hodl. But if everyone hodled, there wouldn't be a secondary market.
Yeah, that's it. There'd be no momentum. That's right. So we talked about crypto voxels and VR earlier. I think it wouldn't be a Metanauts show if we didn't really dive into the metaverse now. So let's go check out your gallery that I know Godfrey Boombox Head helped you build, and check out some other places as well. Whoa, big reveal. Did you like that? Here we are. Tell us about this place, Coldie.
Yeah, so welcome to my gallery, proudly built by Godfrey Mayer III, Boombox Head. He's the master architect of this space, and I basically came to him and said, hey, you know what? VR is where it's headed. I want to be in the space. I want to have my art in there. Again, just to share with people in the metaverse. So we built this in VR chat. And along with that, I was able to start kind of experimenting with new ways of showing my art, right? So this is one of the huge things that I've wanted to do, is get my portraits into actual 3D space. So in the past, I would have a GIF or an MP4 video loop where you could kind of move the camera around and feel the difference. But now this is actually a proof of concept with the Vitalik. This won't be sold. This was just kind of my test ground. to see how these same layers interact as basically a sculpture. But to me, this was an important, experiment to figure out the process too, because I am going to start selling portraits in VR. So now that I know how to make the files, and then, getting them tokenized and able to sell will be, the next step for me.
It's brilliant. There's even the really subtle like refraction of the glass on this. It's just like a really lovely subtle glass box here.
Yeah. Boombox he came up with the encapsulation, which I really liked, because it makes it feel more like something you need to honor. Like you don't walk through it.
Yeah, exactly. That really works. Yeah, it's almost reminds me of the shark, like Damien Hirst shark in the tank sort of vibes.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
And you like, it's such a great way to experience this piece, because I can look right, I'm looking, you just look at things differently, don't you? And it's spatial, when it's large, it elevates the whole thing. I'm looking at the details of the code. I assume that's like, the birth of the Ethereum ERC20 contract, something like that, the code that makes NFTs possible.
Exactly, yeah. And it's funny, when I did a show with this as a big lenticular at Ethereal Summit, and there were quite a few developers who were not really like there for the art per se, but they were reading the code to make sure it was real, and they were impressed. Like, yeah, this is the real Solidity code for a smart contract auction. I'm like, cool, that's what I wanted to put in here. So, it all does matter together. So yeah, it's so much fun to get into this level of depth, because it's different than stereoscopy. And that kind of dovetails. I can show you this other experimental piece over here. What you need to have is a tethered Oculus to see the stereoscopy. So it won't show on the video stream, but I can explain.
No, but I can see it though. It's completely 3D for me. It's jumping out the page. And I've never seen it done before in VR like this. It's awesome.
So this was the thing. When I went to Boombox Head, he knows. I'm like, hey, can we make my stereoscopic images actually have pop to them? And the dude figured it out, and to me, this is again another experiment where I'm super happy with, level 0. And I shoot 3D concert photography. So I have a good collection of really good rock and roll bands live on stage in 3D. But now I can have a VR photo art show, so it's all happening as fast as you want it to happen. And I'm just kind of forcing myself to push forward. Even if I'm busy, I just need to keep engaging and like iterating, so that this portrait you're seeing will turn into, all of my stuff being stereoscopic VR. Like it makes perfect sense to me.
And you've got a studio over here. You've actually got your own little recording booth.
Yeah, come on in.
Let me get on your table. Yeah. There we go. Sit down, behave myself.
So yeah, the other thing that I'm going to start doing is having my own podcast where, I can bring people in and do types of chats. And what I really want to do, Lee, and I would love to have you on, is I want to talk to people whose art I collect, kind of spin it back around and talk about the piece, so it would be like, tell me about Astro Shaman, right? Like in honor, because I'm so proud of I feel like I'm like, am I really low on this table? I'm like,
it looks good. No, it looks good. You've got a giant can there. That's a lot of craft beer. Oh, this mic is exactly where my real mic is in the room as well, so I can literally like touch it.
So yeah, it's all these experiments, right? So I don't know when that will start happening, but I know it's an option. It's fun to just, when it comes up, just start trying new things.
Amazing. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
We go around the corner here. We made kind of an overview of the series in a sense. Some of the key pieces to me that kind of signify what the decentralized series is about.
So you've done quite a lot of these, haven't you, over the years? Like more than this. This is just like a small section of them, yeah.
Yeah, I would say like at least maybe a dozen people, and then probably some of those people have a bunch of variants. You know, Vitalik, there's probably 7 different Vitalik versions that are one of ones. So each person sometimes will have a couple in their own series, and it's getting to a near closing point of these series. So I think that's good to tell people, because I get asked that a lot. Like, are you gonna keep doing like 100 Edward Snowdens? You know, are you like, what's the plan? You know, and the plan all along was to do like, originally it was going to be 10 of each person. Once I started thinking about that, some of these people are done. And honestly, so the best one, let's go look at this John McAfee. This is the perfect example. You know, John McAfee, polarizing character in the space, and he's often dead now. You know, and super sad, right? And at the same time, when you're doing a historical portrait series, inevitably, you know, that happens. You know, mortality is part of life. When McAfee happened, there was only 2 McAfees, and you know, I'm not going to make 8 more McAfees. You know, it's done. Like, I had the opportunity to do like a memorial piece for him, but I think what actually kind of hit me is that that kind of symbolized a beautiful closing to the series, you know, where it can live on. You know, it's going to live on in VR, it's going to live on in other ways, but this specific series of, you know, gifts and MP4s and, you know, the 3D glasses, I feel pretty complete with that. It actually get more nostalgic now looking around, because mentally I'm planning, you know, new things. You know, this was a time and a place, and I think that it's important also to step back at the right time and not keep pushing things.
Yeah, so yeah, like you're saying, it's amazing how just the setting of a piece, putting it in a room, making it large, but you know, it's all of a sudden you're seeing your art from a completely different perspective, and it's really like, it's a really fun thing to do. It's really nice, really it elevates it. And
Yeah, it's true, you know, and I think honestly, what the galleries in the real world needs to see is what size our crypto art needs to be. Like, this is how you need to do it in real life. We need 4 foot, 3 foot at least single panels. Like, we need these things to shine big, you know. Um, and I think it's, maybe it helps them to see it in a virtual setting where it's like, hey, look how much better this looks than your Samsung TV. You know, let's up that game, and that's just time, you know. But but yeah, this has me hooked on VR, and you know, this got me to go explore other worlds, which I think is, you know, such a rabbit hole of fun.
on that note, I'm going to show you something actually. Yeah, I don't think you've seen it before. There's a world that Jin made. Jin is somebody, obviously, he's a metaverse guru. He's an expert builder, community builder, working on Webaverse, which is an excellent NFT platform. We definitely want to get him on Metanauts, but he's built this world that I think you're going to really love.
Him and Boombox Head are super, like they collaborate. You know, they help each other out a lot. He came in here a couple times too, just to like spot check it and, you know, get some input. So huge respect to Jen.
So I can just pop up a portal right here and we can walk on through.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I really wanted to show you Jin's CryptoVoxels world in VR chat, because I know that you were definitely very active in CryptoVoxels at the beginning of the crypto art scene. Lots of friendships were forged there, lots of cool galleries were there. We haven't got the NFT showing because obviously it's VR chat and it isn't on Ethereum or anything. But how cool is it to actually be inside CryptoVoxels like this with this beautiful lighting?
It's amazing. Yeah, because, you know, right now we build and interact on our, you know, PC laptop screens or whatever, and you always want to truly be in it, and it's crazy to be in it in true 3D. So this is, you know, I think that, you know, CryptoVoxels, I think, is going to become a little bit of a time capsule for time and a place. And I think each world's going to have its own quote unquote like value, and I think it's so important that this can, it's starting to get there. And once we can have our crypto voxels really in VR like this, that's a game changer. It doesn't bother me that it's blocky. It's just a different aesthetic, but I buy it. It works.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, I think. And I think if you just walk down here, I think it just goes on and on. I don't know how far it goes, but it's quite a way.
Like, this is crazy. You and me are literally hanging out on an art walk. And I remember some of these early builds. Like, I remember this mushroom head one. Some of these things in terms of crypto voxels are super OG builds, because before there was NFTs, people were building, basically mosaic walls and stuff like that.
Because it was purely black and white to begin with, wasn't it?
Yeah, there wasn't even colored blocks. Yep, I came in when I think there wasn't even colored blocks, and the building tools were very primitive. Wow, this is so amazing. Dude, I wonder how far this goes, because I have a gallery not far from here.
Oh, let's see if we can find the building.
So this is the Frankfurt Towers area, which was one of the first main, they have the skyscrapers, which is why I knew where we were. So that kind of oriented me. And this here is my gallery. Normally that's all skinned with my NFT collection. So yeah, this is crazy. This is the world. And again, I was building this on my PC with, a keyboard. So it's crazy to be able to actually feel the volume and the size of what it is. And it is like huge void. There's just like nothing out here. It's just beautiful. Like right now, this is all developed, Wow, this is so early on. This is crazy. And you know what's going to happen? These things can be NFTs. Like this is a historical document of what Crypto Voxels was at this point, like 2 years ago. Like you got Token Angels. This is the beginning of his Token Angels build, like, wow. All he had to do was write his name, and now it's basically like immortalized in this build, which is crazy. This was before we could start doing real crazy stuff, this was one of the first builds that was pushing the limits of, architecture and what was possible with these spaces. Because, God, this is amazing. Like, look, to see this in stereo 3D is wild. I could literally walk around this thing forever.
Yeah, I think it just goes on and on and on. Like, I think he might have got the whole of Origin City.
Well, hats off to Jin. I mean, this is what innovators do. Oh my gosh, it's like freaking Burning Man out here. Like,
yeah. Yeah, so how cool is this? I'm so glad that you hadn't seen this before. I really wanted to show you, and I was really hoping that you hadn't seen it before. So I'm glad that you came and saw it.
Yeah, this blew my mind.
It's been great. This has been you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Perfect first episode for the Metanauts. Really happy, really excited about doing more and hanging out more as well, man. Hanging out in VR.
It's been an honor. And thank you for doing this. And thanks for inviting me. Let's do it again.
No worries.